Most people grow up believing that the world is just the way it is. You wake up, follow routines, deal with rules, worry about time, money, and responsibilities, and assume this is simply how life works. Few people ever stop to ask why the world feels so heavy, so repetitive, or so hard to step outside of, even when nothing is technically wrong. What ancient traditions noticed is that the world does not just exist randomly. It runs on patterns, rules, limits, cycles. And these patterns quietly shape how we think, how we behave, and how we see ourselves, long before we ever question them. In Gnostic teachings, these invisible rules were given a name, the Archons. That word sounds mysterious, but the idea behind it is actually very simple. The Archons are not monsters, demons, or secret beings watching you. They are the forces and systems that keep the material world working the way it does. Think about gravity, time, survival, schedules, fear of loss, the need to compete, and the pressure to fit into roles. None of these feel evil. They feel normal. But together, they create a world where life feels serious, limited, and often exhausting. The Gnostics used the word Archons to describe this entire system of control and structure, not because it is cruel, but because it is powerful and unquestioned. What you were never told is that the material world is not just physical. It also shapes your attention. From the moment you are born, you are taught what matters, what doesn't, what is realistic, and what is impossible. Over time, you stop asking deeper questions, not because you choose to, but because the world trains you to stay focused on survival and routine. This is why so many people feel like life is happening to them, rather than something they are consciously part of. The world keeps moving. Time keeps pushing forward. Responsibilities keep piling up. And very little space is left to ask who you are beyond your role, your worries, or your past. The Gnostics did not see this as a personal failure. They saw it as a feature of the material world itself. The Archons represent the way reality keeps consciousness busy, focused, and narrow, so that life continues smoothly, even if people forget to ask what it all means. Understanding this idea can be surprisingly calming. It explains why life feels structured instead of random, why stepping outside routine feels difficult, and why deep questions often show up only when something breaks, slows down, or feels empty. And if this kind of explanation already feels clearer and more honest than what you've heard before, subscribing to the channel helps you keep exploring these ideas in a simple, grounded way, without fear, exaggeration, or confusing language. To really understand the Archons, though, we need to start at the beginning, by answering a basic question in plain terms. What are the Archons exactly, and why does the material world need them at all? To understand the Archons, it helps to forget everything that sounds dramatic or frightening and start with something very ordinary. The Archons are not characters hiding behind reality. They are the rules that reality follows, especially the rules that make life feel fixed, serious, and hard to escape. Think about how the world works. Time only moves forward. Bodies get tired and grow old. You have to work to survive. If you stop paying attention, things fall apart. These rules do not ask for permission. They do not care how you feel. They simply exist, and life must adjust to them. The Gnostics used the word Archons to talk about this whole system of rules and pressures. Not because they hated the world, but because they noticed something important. These rules keep the world running, but they also keep people focused on survival instead of awareness. What you were never told is that the Archons are not good or bad in a moral sense. They are functional. Just like traffic lights control movement on the road, the Archons control how life moves inside the material world. Without them, the world would be chaotic. With them, the world becomes organized, predictable, and heavy. This is why life feels so structured. You are born into rules you did not choose. You must follow schedules. You must adapt. You must worry about consequences. None of this is personal. The system works the same way for everyone. The Archons do not tell you what to believe. They shape what feels possible. They quietly teach you what is realistic and what is impossible. Over time, you stop questioning those limits, not because someone forbids you, but because the world trains you to accept them as normal. What you were never told is that this acceptance is where the Archons gain their power. Not through force, but through familiarity. When rules feel natural, they are rarely questioned. When pressure feels normal, it becomes invisible. This is why the Archons were never meant to be feared. Fear only makes them stronger. They were meant to be recognized. Once you see that the world runs on systems designed for survival and control, you stop confusing those systems with the full truth about reality. The material world needs the Archons to function. But awareness does not belong to them. Awareness can notice the rules without being completely owned by them. That difference is small, but it changes everything. To see how these rules came into place in the first place, and why the material world depends on them so deeply, the next step is to understand why the world was built this way at all. When people look at the world honestly, one thing becomes very clear. Life does not feel loose or flexible. It feels organized, demanding, and often difficult to slow down. There are schedules, rules, expectations, and consequences everywhere. Even when no one is forcing you directly, you still feel pressure to keep going. Ancient thinkers asked a simple question. Why does the world feel this way? Why does life seem built around limits instead of freedom? Their answer was not emotional or dramatic. It was practical. A physical world needs structure to exist. Without structure, nothing could last long enough to be experienced. Bodies would not survive. Nature would not repeat its cycles. Life would collapse before it could even begin. The world works because it is stable. Time moves in one direction. Actions have consequences. Effort is required. These rules make life possible. They allow things to grow, change, and continue. But they also create pressure. What you were never told is that the same rules that keep the world working also make it feel heavy. A system designed for stability cannot be soft or flexible all the time. It must repeat itself. It must enforce limits. It must keep things predictable. That predictability is comforting, but it can also feel suffocating. Think of it like a school. Without rules, learning would be impossible. But when you are inside the school every day, the rules feel strict. Bells tell you where to be. Schedules decide your time. Expectations shape your behavior. The structure helps things function, but it does not feel free. The material world works the same way. The Archons are simply the name given to this structure. They are not trying to hurt anyone. They are doing their job. Keeping the system running. Making sure life continues in an orderly way. This is why the world feels convincing. The rules prove themselves constantly. Ignore gravity and you fall. Ignore time and deadlines catch up. Ignore effort and results disappear. The system reinforces itself so well that most people stop imagining anything beyond it. What you were never told is that the world was never designed to explain itself. It was designed to function. Meaning, purpose, and deeper understanding do not come from the structure itself. They come from how awareness relates to it. This is where frustration begins for many people. They look for lasting meaning inside routines, roles, and success, and feel disappointed when it does not appear. The world keeps working, but something feels missing. That feeling is important. It is not a weakness. It is awareness starting to notice that functioning is not the same as understanding. And once that feeling appears, a natural question follows. How does living inside such a structured world affect who we believe we are, and why is it so easy to forget that there may be more to us than just surviving inside these rules? Living inside the material world means living inside these rules all the time, even when you are not thinking about them. From the moment you wake up, time is already pushing you forward. You have things to do, places to be, responsibilities waiting. Life rarely gives you space to stop and simply be. This is how the Archons affect human life most strongly. Not through fear or punishment, but through routine. Life becomes a series of tasks. Wake up. Work. Solve problems. Worry about the future. Repeat. Over time, this rhythm starts to feel normal, even when it feels exhausting. What you were never told is that the world trains attention very early. As a child, you learn what matters and what does not. You learn what is rewarded and what is ignored. Slowly, awareness shifts away from curiosity and toward performance. Being busy becomes more important than being present. This is why many people feel like life is something they must keep up with, rather than something they are actively choosing. Even moments meant for rest often turn into distraction. Phones, noise, and constant information keep the mind occupied. Silence starts to feel uncomfortable, not because it is bad, but because it is unfamiliar. The Archons work best when everything feels urgent. When there is always something unfinished, something missing, something to improve. Under this pressure, people rarely ask deeper questions. Not because they are not intelligent, but because they are tired. What you were never told is that this tiredness is not only physical. It is mental and emotional. It comes from living on the surface for too long. From always responding, planning, and protecting, while something deeper inside remains unheard. This is also why success does not always bring peace. Even when goals are reached, the system quickly creates new ones. New worries. New comparisons. The world keeps moving, and the pressure never fully disappears. Understanding this can be relieving. It shows that feeling overwhelmed does not mean something is wrong with you. It means you are human, living inside a system built to keep life moving forward, not to slow it down. And if this explanation puts words to something you have felt but never fully understood, taking a moment to like the video helps this content reach others who feel the same quiet pressure but think they are alone in it. Sometimes clarity spreads simply by being shared. When this awareness starts to form, another question naturally appears. If the world runs on rules and routines, where does that leave the human being inside it, and is there any space left for awareness beyond just surviving the day? Imagine you've spent your whole life following routines, doing things because you've been told to, or because it's always been done that way. Then, one day, you stop and ask yourself, is this really all there is? Is there something more to life than just following these rules? What you were never told is that when you start asking these deeper questions, it doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means you are starting to see outside the patterns that the Archons have set in place. You are beginning to recognize that these rules are just tools to keep the world running, not the only way to experience reality. This is when life can feel a bit unsettling. The familiar structure that made life feel safe and predictable starts to feel too small. You might feel like you're walking outside of what everyone else is doing, like you're no longer just playing the game the way it was designed. But this is also the moment when something deeper inside you begins to wake up. You begin to realize that you can still live within the structure of the world, with time, with laws, with responsibilities, but without being owned by them. The Archons still do their job, but they no longer define who you are or limit your experience. What you were never told is that stepping outside of this automatic way of living doesn't mean you're rejecting the world. It means you are learning how to live within the world with a different kind of awareness. It's like stepping out of a fog and seeing everything clearly. The world isn't bad. It just isn't the whole picture. This is why the greatest spiritual teachings often encourage slowing down, meditating, or questioning everything you've been told. Not to escape the world, but to stop letting it define you. It's not about rejecting responsibility or ignoring what's important. It's about recognizing that there's more to you than just what the world says you should be. What you were never told is that this moment of questioning is natural. It's part of how awareness grows. It doesn't mean you've failed the world. It means you're starting to see that there's a deeper connection to life waiting for you, just beyond the routine. If this feeling of waking up to something deeper in life feels familiar to you, it's because you're not alone. Many people have felt this at one point or another, that sense that life is more than what you've been told. And if this resonates with you, liking the video helps spread this message so others can feel seen and understood too. Now, let's look at what happens after you begin to see the world for what it is, how your relationship with the rules changes and how you begin to find meaning beyond survival and routine. Once you begin to see the world beyond the surface, something interesting starts to happen. The rules and structures that once seemed so heavy, so unchangeable, start to feel a bit different. They no longer define you. You begin to recognize that you can still live in this world, work within its systems, and participate in life, but with a different awareness. What you were never told is that seeing the world clearly does not mean rejecting it. It means recognizing it as it is, a system of rules, laws, and patterns that help things function, but that do not hold the answers to who you really are. Life, at its core, is about awareness, and not simply about following routines or playing roles. This shift happens slowly. It is like suddenly realizing that you've been on a road you didn't choose, but now you can decide whether to stay on it or explore another path. This doesn't mean you ignore your responsibilities or stop caring. It simply means that you stop identifying with them as the only thing that matters. What you were never told is that when you begin to see the rules of the world for what they are, you no longer feel stuck in them. You see them as tools to help you move through life, not as barriers that define your every step. You start realizing that you have the power to choose your response to everything around you. For example, you might still have to wake up early for work or school, but instead of feeling frustrated by the routine, you start to understand that it is just part of the structure. You may even begin to find meaning in the small things you once took for granted. Each moment becomes an opportunity to reconnect with your deeper awareness. What you were never told is that this shift doesn't make life easier in a traditional sense. Life still has challenges, responsibilities, and limitations. But when you begin to see the world clearly, you stop seeing those challenges as problems you have to fight against. You start seeing them as part of a larger process, something to understand rather than just react to. This deeper awareness doesn't make life perfect. It makes life more meaningful. It helps you navigate with greater ease because you understand that you are more than the roles you play or the rules you follow. The Archons still maintain the system of life, but their control over your perception begins to loosen. If this idea of shifting your relationship with the world feels powerful, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. Many people feel this tension between the world's rules and their deeper awareness, and talking about it can help you connect with others who are also waking up to a new way of being. With this awareness in place, the next part of the journey is to look at what happens when you realize this system is not the only reality and how your soul moves beyond it, even as you still live in the material world. Once you start seeing the world for what it is, a question often comes up: what now? You've noticed that life is full of rules, patterns, and structures, but you've also begun to realize that those rules do not define the entire picture. So, what happens when you accept that there is more to life than just following the system? What you were never told is that this recognition doesn't change the world instantly, but it changes how you experience it. Once you understand that the rules of the material world are not the whole story, the pressure to fit in or follow starts to lessen. You begin to feel freer, more open to new possibilities. It's like realizing you've been playing a game by its rules, but you're finally starting to understand that the game isn't the only thing that matters. The rules don't disappear, but you can stop seeing them as the most important part of the experience. Life becomes more about living than about following. What you were never told is that this shift can feel uncomfortable at first. It's like stepping out of a path that everyone else seems to be on and not being sure what comes next. You might start to question your choices, your identity, or your role in society. This uncertainty can feel unsettling, but it's actually a sign that you're starting to wake up. Instead of living on autopilot, just reacting to life as it happens, you begin to live more intentionally. You choose what matters to you, not because the system tells you to, but because it feels aligned with your deeper awareness. You stop worrying about meeting every expectation, and start focusing on what feels right for you. What you were never told is that this is freedom. Not the kind of freedom where everything becomes easy, but the kind where you feel in control of your choices, no longer bound by the pressure to conform. Life is still full of challenges, but you begin to see them as opportunities to grow, rather than obstacles to avoid. If this idea resonates with you, if you've ever felt that deeper awareness slowly waking up in your own life, share your thoughts in the comments. It's always interesting to hear how others are experiencing this shift. You're not alone in feeling that there's more to life than what meets the eye. As you live with this new awareness, it's important to look at where it leads. Once you recognize that life is not just about following the rules, where does it take you next? What happens when the system no longer holds your attention completely, and you begin to move toward a deeper understanding of yourself and your place in the universe? Once you realize that the world is full of rules, patterns, and systems that are meant to keep things running, the next question becomes, how do you move beyond them? The truth is, you don't need to escape the world. You don't have to fight against the system. The real shift happens when you realize that you can still live within the system, but you don't have to let it control you. What you were never told is that true freedom doesn't mean rejecting the world or living outside of it. It means learning to live consciously within it. Instead of letting life's rules define who you are, you begin to define yourself by your own awareness, choices, and understanding of who you are at a deeper level. This is where things really begin to shift. When you see the world clearly, you stop being controlled by automatic habits or rules. You begin to move more deliberately. Your choices are no longer based on fear of failure, or worry about judgment. Instead, you make decisions based on what aligns with your deeper sense of purpose, your deeper awareness of who you really are. What you were never told is that living in the world with this awareness feels less like survival and more like participation. You're no longer caught in the cycle of reacting to life's pressure, but instead, you start living life intentionally. It's not about escaping the material world. It's about engaging with it differently. This shift can feel freeing, but it doesn't always make life easier in the traditional sense. You may still face challenges, work, or difficult relationships. What changes is how you see them. You start to see these challenges as opportunities to practice what you've learned, not as things to overcome in order to reach some perfect state. What you were never told is that, as you move beyond the automatic responses of fear, identity, and routine, you begin to experience life with greater depth and meaning. The system no longer has a hold on you because you've stopped identifying with it completely. Instead, you engage with it more fully, knowing it's a part of the experience, but not the totality of who you are. If this way of thinking resonates with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes just talking about the shift in perspective can help clarify it for others who are also going through similar changes. Life is full of systems, but we're not meant to be owned by them. The next question, then, is where does the soul go from here? Once you start living beyond the rules and limitations, what is the deeper purpose that becomes clear? What happens when the soul begins to fully remember itself again? When the soul begins to remember itself beyond the rules, beyond the roles, and beyond the identity it once thought it was, something powerful starts to shift. It's like returning home after a long journey, a journey that involved forgetting and learning, only to realize that the answers were always there, just waiting to be rediscovered. What you were never told is that true understanding is not something that happens all at once. It doesn't appear in a single moment of clarity. It's a slow process of recognizing that the world and all its rules are not the final answer. Instead, they are tools that help awareness experience itself more deeply. At this point, the soul begins to see the world less as a place to be fixed and more as a place to experience. The Archons still govern the material world with time, rules, and structure, but they no longer hold authority over the soul's understanding. The soul knows that it is part of something greater than the system it was born into. What you were never told is that the deeper understanding the soul gains is not about knowing more facts or finding hidden secrets. It's about recognizing that the soul is more than just the body, the mind, or the story it has been living. It is awareness itself. It is the part of you that cannot be confined by time, identity, or material existence. This realization changes everything. The soul doesn't need to escape the world or fight against it. It simply begins to see through the limitations that once seemed so real. Fear loses its grip because the soul knows it's not bound by the material world's rules. Identity loses its weight because the soul remembers that it is more than just the roles it plays. What you were never told is that this kind of understanding frees you from the need to prove yourself. The soul no longer feels the pressure to meet expectations or fit into the world's limited view of what life is supposed to be. It simply lives, choosing its path with more clarity and less fear. This doesn't mean that life becomes easier or perfect. It means that the soul sees life as part of a larger journey, not a test to be passed or a system to escape. Each moment is an opportunity for the soul to express itself, to grow, and to experience life with greater depth and meaning. If this perspective feels freeing to you, like a weight lifting off your shoulders, share your thoughts in the comments. The more we talk about these ideas, the more we connect with others who are also starting to see the world for what it truly is. Awareness is the key to freedom, and we're not meant to experience it alone. Now, with this deeper understanding in place, it's time to reflect on how all of this fits together, how the soul's journey is not just about survival or conformity, but about awakening to a deeper reality, beyond the limits we've been taught to live by. When everything comes together, a powerful truth becomes clear: the soul's journey through life, death, and even beyond is not about escaping the material world or rejecting the rules. It's about remembering that you are more than what the world tells you to be. The Archons, the material world, the pressures of life, they are not your enemies. They are the conditions in which the soul learns, grows, and understands more deeply. What you were never told is that the soul enters the material world, not to be punished, but to experience what it cannot know in its original state. Life, with all its rules, time, and limitations, is the classroom where awareness gets to see itself in a new way. Through suffering, joy, success, and failure, the soul gradually understands that it is more than just the experiences it goes through. This understanding shifts everything. The world still works the same way. Time still passes. There are still responsibilities, consequences, and challenges. But when the soul remembers its true nature, it stops seeing the world as a prison. Instead, it sees it as a place for growth, a place where awareness gets to experience itself through form, through identity, through limitation. What you were never told is that this understanding does not remove the world's challenges, but it changes how you relate to them. Life no longer feels like something you need to escape. It becomes a process of participating fully, but without being consumed by it. The soul sees itself as part of the material world, not trapped by it. The most freeing part of this understanding is that it removes the need to prove anything. You no longer feel the pressure to meet expectations or to live according to someone else's rules. Instead, you begin to live with greater freedom, because you understand that the limitations of the material world do not define you. What you were never told is that the real power is awareness. The Archons, the rules, and the world structure are still here, but they only have power when we forget who we really are. When we remember, we no longer feel owned by them. We participate with them, but we don't let them control us. This is the ultimate lesson the soul is here to learn. Life is a process of recognizing the deeper truth of who we are and how we fit into the world. When we awaken to this, everything changes. We can live within the system, but we don't have to be limited by it. If this understanding brings a sense of peace or freedom to you, it's because this truth is waiting for everyone to discover it. And if you're ready to continue exploring ideas that go deeper into what it means to live with awareness, subscribing to the channel will help you stay connected. Life is not about escaping. It's about recognizing the truth behind what's real. The journey of the soul is not about being perfect. It's about waking up to a bigger picture and living with that awareness in a world full of rules that are not the whole story.